What's up, YouTube?
Hello,
We're back again.
and we are doing the stunning conclusion to our beloved series, Talkin' Machen, Enter the Machenverse, discussing the works within the Great God Pan and Other Horror Stories by Arthur Machen, Arthur.
Show your cover. Oh, you have a background. You can't see it
I
because
do,
you're
yeah. Hold on.
yeah. Your
There you go.
cover's cooler than mine. You have the
Yeah,
hardcover.
it's dope. It's
It's the
the
same
Oxford.
edition. It's the same edition with the same pagination, I believe, but your cover is just doper.
Yeah, it's like the cloth bound one. They have a really good. Who's that ghost story, British ghost story author that you also really like? I forget
Mr
that.
Mr James.
Yeah, they have a
Yeah.
really nice. It's like a gray cloth bound edition of his works too, in the same style as this.
Ooh,
That
that
I've
sounds
been,
dope. I gotta get
yeah,
that.
I've been debating getting. I really wish more publishers would do. I guess it's kind of a sunk cost a lot of the time or something, but
Yeah, it's niche,
yeah,
and it's one of those things where you have to price it so not so high, but because how many people are gonna buy it, and you got to get your money back.
this says it was $22.95, so
Oh,
that's not too
that's
bad.
not bad. That's not bad at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. So it's not
Um,
even. You can't even moan about the price.
well, for new viewers who are coming here from our Dark Souls boss tier list.
Yeah, for all the gamers that we somehow like sort of catfished into joining, welcome, I suppose.
Hopefully you found our personalities congenial enough to watch another video or two.
Yeah, hopefully our
Um,
like our banter translates through different mediums. Or not mediums, but topics, I suppose.
oh yeah, I guess it's the same medium. We're talking about different mediums, video games and literature,
Via the same
but
medium.
yeah, exactly, precisely, right.
Yeah, okay. It's
So
we love literature and we love getting the wording of things right.
that's right. We're fucking pedantic what's the term? What's the term I'm looking for? Um
Uh Suits.
no, when someone's not I was just whatever,
You're literally
linguistics.
a teacher.
I know. It'll come to me. It'll come to me when I stop thinking of it. Anyway, so as Matt said already, we're concluding The Great God Pan and Other Stories by our Arthur Machen.
See? Tough.
It is hard. Say that 5 times fast.
Arthur
Arthur
Mach. Well
Machen,
now,
Arthur Machen, Arthur Machen, Arthur Machen. It's,
yeah.
yeah. Um. So we're covering six stories this episode.
hmm
And most of them are pretty short. I think the longest one is like 20 pages. There's like a 10 pager, and that's it. But the other
Yeah.
ones are like 3 or 4. So not a particularly onerous it's probably like 50 pages total or something like that, right?
Yeah.
um okay, so we're going to be talking about, you want to just go through in order here?
Yeah, list them for the people and then we'll just go in order of how you listed them.
All right, so the stories that we're going to be talking about tonight are Psychology, Midsummer, N, The Tree of Life, Change, and Ritual.
Yes.
So let's start with Psychology.
Okay, this one's probably the most straightforward
This
also.
yeah, I think so.
Where the
This is basically like a, I mean, maybe we'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll disagree. I mean, this is basically like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, right? Like it's a guy who's sort of talking to his inner demon person. Maybe
Yeah,
I miss.
I
We say this is the most straightforward one, and we neither of us have any idea what it was about.
Well, okay, that's good. You threw me for a loop because I suppose, yeah, I mean he could be talking to a part of himself. I didn't immediately go there though. I thought it was another one of these sort of kind of set by precedent from Machen himself, like a in sort of you got your Agent Scully type person who's disbelieving and just sort of like skeptical. Your skeptic come in,
Right.
your stodgy British skeptic who believes, because this is sort of like the interlocutor that Machen likes to break down, right? The person who's like, yeah, stiff upper lip and everything's normal, and the British way, and then some man is usually like, it's actually nuts out there. You know, there's
Right.
fucking fairies and like dark forces roiling underneath. So I thought it was like just a psychologist who kind of went through his own mental break,
Mm.
relaying it to like a colleague.
So the two characters, we'll maybe leave it open for now whether or not they're the same person or not, is Mr. Dale and Jennings, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And interestingly, because you talked about how Machen likes to have these um skeptical characters, and Jennings, this is a fun fact. I looked up the last name Jennings,
yeah.
and Jennings, I forget his first name already, even though I looked it up like an hour ago. Um, was originally he was like a British scientist, naturalist guy. And he was originally supposed to be the person who was on the HMS Beagle to
Oh,
do
the Darwin
the
boat?
research that Darwin did. And essentially, Darwin pinch hit for this guy because he couldn't go for whatever reason.
Really?
Yes, look, yeah, you can look it up.
This wasn't an endnote thing, was it?
No, I just looked up the last name. It might be in the end notes. I didn't check. Leonard Jennings. Um, and so he basically Wally pipped himself, which if you know anything about baseball history, Wally Pip, Wally Pip was the guy who, like, essentially called out sick um, for the Yankees one day and was replaced by Lou Gehrig, who, of course, held the record for most consecutive games played for a very long time and is one of the most famous players in history. So Wally Pip is like
Of disease fame.
Lou Gehrig of disease fame, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Wally Pip has become a sort of icon of, like, you know, calling out sick and getting your job taken over by someone who does it much better than you. And
Yeah.
so it seems like Jennings did the same thing with Darwin on the HMS Beagle voyage.
Job cucked, you know?
Job. Yeah,
Someone
exactly.
comes in and just it makes everyone pleased in such a way as to render you superfluous.
Yeah. All right. So, so yeah. I mean, this is like a 2-page story, but
Yeah, and the basic message of it is something that would probably be more disturbing than, but is essentially like, what if we're the crazy ones,
right.
right? Like kind of
There's a beast in all of us.
right, yeah, like there is something, what if the final frontier of understanding or like secret knowledge lies within the mad who we've sort of like corralled and kept in sanitariums and all this shit. Like what if they're the final frontier of like true insight into what we need to know, and it's just too, but it's too horrifying because it makes
Well,
you crazy.
and interestingly, that sort of and I don't have a perfect timeline of when all these stories were written and published in this book, but I think the way that it's organized is actually pretty helpful, because in these last few stories that we're going to be talking about today, you do see that sort of transition to the, like, um eldritch madness, psychological, institutional kind of themes, because that comes up a lot in these last few stories, people being in institutions and being mad, but that giving them some access to the truth somehow.
Right, via
um
via some unbidden uh revelation, like some sort of forced encounter with like
right.
what they didn't want to see.
And that sort of leads, I think, naturally into the Lovecraft stuff that I think Machen is often credited as a progenitor of.
Yeah,
um yeah. I guess the only thing that I thought is worth reading from this one is basically the end, right?
yeah,
Um,
I was gonna do similar
go
things
ahead, go
before.
ahead. Yeah, pop off.
Well, where were you gonna start?
I was going to start, and we talked of absurd dreams.
Yeah, okay. You want me to do it?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, man. And we talk of absurd dreams, he said to himself, and these are wilder than the wildest visions, and our sins, but these are the sins of nightmare. And every day, he went on, we lead two lives. The half of our soul is madness, and half heaven is lit by a black sun. I say I am a man, but who is the other that hides in me? Yeah. And that's how it ends.
Well, and so I guess that's kind of why I was like, is this the same guy? Right? Is it just one person? Because is the
That's a fair
other,
question.
you know what I mean? Because I sort of interpreted it as a guy having a discussion with himself. And one is sort of that more skeptical, and one is the sort of more bestial, connected to the cosmos, whatever, you know what I mean? But I think it's certainly left open.
Yeah, when did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde come out?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Here, I'm searching it now, but my computer sucks. I'll let that cook while we discuss something else.
All right, so let's move on to Midsummer, another very short story, 3 pages, 2.5 pages.
Did we actually discuss this one before?
Oh, did we? We might have on an earlier episode.
I'm suspicious.
Did we tack it on? I don't remember.
Oh, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was first published in 1886.
So that would have been sort of around when Machen was publishing, if I'm not mistaken, right?
The stories follow not an exact chronology, but they loosely progress through like they are loosely chronological with like when they were published. They go from 60s to like 1930s almost.
Well, no,
he died.
He was born in 1863.
Oh fuck! Never mind.
He would have only been in his 20s when the Dr. Jekyll stuff was coming out.
I guess well, okay, so then like the end of the 1800s into like the 1930s, like basically just shy of the World War II, like he seems to have been writing, or is when the span of this collection sort of
he died in 47. So
damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I don't remember if we talked about Midsummer.
We can talk about it. Who cares? We can talk about it. It's also not very long.
No, it's not. I mean, if we did talk about it, then all I have to say is it's better than the movie. The movie sucks.
I feel like you made this joke.
Yeah. We might have talked about it, but it's worth reiterating because Midsummer the movie is dog shit. I know you like it.
I don't love it. I just I think it's pretty good. I think it's okay.
We'll have to do a debate for the Patreons. By the way, viewers and new viewers, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/spinecrackers, where we post full episodes of all of our book reviews. We do Q&A from our Discord members, which you get access to for as little as $2 a month. We post I posted myself playing for all the Dark Souls people that are coming to this. I posted 3 hours of me trying to beat Sister Fried, and I was drunk and yelling, and so that's fun.
It's pretty intimate. It's actually a somewhat intimate like window into Gabe's life at the moment.
Yeah, it was. I like to let people in, I'm an open book, pun intended.
Yeah, your spine was cracked for these folks.
Yeah, that's right.
As you're just like galloping through like a snowy area, just being like, where the fuck this is the 90% of the content. What the fuck am I? Was there like a switch I was supposed to hit?
No, dude, that was
these fucking bugs.
Fucking thing, dude.
And then you're just like, how many of these fucking bugs are they respawning? Like an hour of just
that was
like,
one.
Are they respawning or what's the fucking?
By the way, I still don't know the answer to that question. Do those bugs respawn where the switch is?
I don't know.
I mean, obviously they respawn when you die, like all Dark Souls enemies, but I wasn't like, it seemed like they were infinitely
like they were dropping
right, anyway.
from a sack. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, I think we can assume that we talked about Midsummer already. I think we did. I think you convinced me.
Well, now I'm nervous. Can we just give like some sort of
of course.
Precis?
Yeah. So this is about a guy who lives on a farm out in the country, and he you know, one of Machen's preoccupations that we've talked about in previous episodes that we will talk about again tonight is the sort of the nature of the city. He's like one of the OG like urbanists, I would say.
Yeah, psychogeographers, as we
right,
said.
right.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that he endorses it, but in the sense that he sort of was deeply interested in the effects of the city on civilization and on the human sort of psyche, human experience, right? And so there's this guy who lives out on a farm, and he goes out into the woods one night and sees a bunch of naked girls, farmers' daughters from around the countryside doing a creepy something.
I mean, this is the classic witch scenario. This is like what the Crucible starts with, remember?
Yes.
And this is the ending of the Vivitch by
Well,
Eggers.
and even like the Scarlet Letter, it's like implied, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this kind of naked, like sort of erotic pagan you know, sort of communing with the devil, or
Right.
you know, Pan or whoever. Yeah, and he loves having, like, again, stodgy kind of staid little British people being like flabbergasted by it, you know, usually wandering somewhere they shouldn't, or
Yes.
just whatever, and then just being like, oh, good behold, no. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it's just all about Leonard, like this guy, and like he's doing his chores, right?
That's right. Yeah,
and
he stumbles on this.
Yeah, what do they call a coterie? No, what is it?
Like what's like a coven?
A coven. Thank you. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh Lord, no.
Yeah. Better than the movie, creepier than the movie. Good little vignette story.
Okay, fine. I'll let you take your shots, and we'll just move on.
All right, N. This is the longest one that we read for this episode. This is about 20 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this I have to just note that in none of the stories that we read for this episode, Dyson and Phillips are conspicuously absent. Our boys
done with them. Yeah.
So, you know, if you listen to the earlier episodes of this series, we talked a lot about the sort of extended Machenverse, right? Where the two main kind of like Matt said earlier, the Mulder and Scully of the universe, Dyson and Phillips, were sort of one of the running threads through a lot of the stories. They appeared sometimes together, sometimes individually. They're not in any of these later stories in this collection.
And these are the remaining stories are all like later Machen. Like he's close to death, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, it's 1936 when this story first appears. And I think it's similar like time frame when the last couple we're going to talk about up here.
And so I wonder, like, why did he drop them, you know?
I know, because I was really interested in like also what was the name of the guy in like the Black Pyramid or whatever.
The ringleader guy, right?
Yeah,
I forget his name.
God
off the top
damn
of
it.
my head. Yeah,
but I was excited for some more, you know, overt confrontation between those people.
Or he's in the Three Imposters too, right?
Yeah, he pops up, you know, at least 3 times, I think. Yeah.
So there's a lot of like these characters that appear and reappear, and he seems to have essentially dropped all of that in these later stories.
And he's also seemed to double down on the Fae folk.
Yes.
As the subject he's the most interested in.
Yes.
Which I'm curious about. And I think it might, I feel like it has some connection to the fact that he was way more deep into like theosophy at this point. And theosophy is like, you know, we all knew he was part of, you know, the Golden Dawn, with the Order of the Golden Dawn or whatever. And like,
he was basically Radagon of the Golden Order.
Of the Golden Order, yes, you're
from
right.
Elden Ring.
Elden Ring. Yeah.
Shout outs to our Dark Souls viewers. We love you.
Yeah, sorry, we forgot to keep you, you know, keep your ears perked. keep you fluffed for the rest of this. Yeah, but I don't know why it would maybe link to that, but I think like part of what's bizarre about Theosophy is all the kind of the race theories that they have, and the idea of like these disappeared races or these obscured races, because they believed in like fucking Lemurians and Atlanteans and
Yes.
the Ur races that like originated the kind of now tainted and vitiated theology that they were trying to bring back to its like pure form so that they could, have superpowers or whatever.
Well, yeah, we're
And it just
gonna.
feels like the Fae folk are part of that obsession. It's like within Wales, which has a very interesting history of, and I think in Wales there's a lot of an idea of like there was a suppressed, to this day, like there's a lot of people that are like there's all of this kind of connection with like ancient Phoenicia and like the Romans and like the inhabitants of Wales, and that was all kind of meddled with and distorted and suppressed by like the actual like Anglo like British.
Well, and Machen, of course, is deeply interested in the Roman history of Britain, right? And he talks about that in a lot of stories and references Roman ruins and walls and traditions and mythologies like pretty frequently.
And he's Welsh, so he would have a vested kind of potential like national pride a little bit in just like that region. But
so this story N it follows three guys basically, Perrot, Harless, and Arnold. And it's I think Arnold is kind of the main character, sort of, because he becomes interested in this like little town, basically like a suburb, I think.
Yeah.
And he goes out there to sort of see like, I'm trying to find a good way to, I mean, basically, so there's like this diary or something that he finds of this guy who, wait, is this the one? Hold on. No. I'm mixing my two stories up. I'm sorry. That's the next story.
These are like no, you're kind of right, like Harrow and Harrington or Harless and whatnot, like they're discussing, it's basically like old timers reminiscing, like people that have like a deep familiarity with the region, and I think there's, or like they're talking about how the city has changed. They're talking about like
it's a story about gentrification, basically.
Yeah, or just just urban shift and flux and gentrification and whatnot, and how like within the lifetime of these people, they had seen social change that resulted in urban change that like alarmed them or they thought was good. They're kind of conservative the way I think, sort of like Machen mouthpieces, like they're just sort of like, we this kind of used to be a safer neighborhood, like all that kind of shit. And so they're very interested in the ways in which the face of the city has changed and how it creates a dissonance with their memories.
So he meets these old head guys at this random bar, right?
Basically, yes, he's in his search for the kind of the old memories.
Because okay, so I was right. I actually wasn't confused, because this is the one where there's that diary or that story, and it's like a story about a guy who like sees essentially like a fragment of Eden out of his random apartment window.
It's the recollection. It's the retelling of a story by one of the old heads in this pub.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's about a guy, like this mysterious guy who, connecting back to your earlier point about insanity, who it turns out had escaped from an insane asylum and rented an apartment in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And he was able to sort of like view out of his window sort of like a fragment of Eden, right? And anyone who came up to his apartment could also see it, but only through one window.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that, like we were saying, I think this is just like sort of a commentary on gentrification, right? It's like this this memory of the way the neighborhood used to be as this sort of like Edenic place that when you actually go out and walk around in it has all of the modern inconveniences and offenses.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit more than just a comment. Like I think that Machen, just again in this these sort of like 1936, like I think he really, like, in some ways was trying to communicate the reality of this. So I think part of the escalation from these people who were like, oh, remember when, statute blah 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 was passed removing all fences from around the royal housing, and how that, like, you
Right.
couldn't have a basically like lamenting like the fact that like doormen weren't at every place, and um they are describing the superficial ultimately, and then discover the even more profound, like, ancient truth
Right.
of the flux. So it's like I feel like he's juxtaposing those two things to be like, here's these guys that are like, remember this cool store? It's not there anymore. That fucking sucks. Like, do you remember like how nice it was when everyone was safely bound by iron wrought fences, and then there was some sort of parliamentary spat that like removed them for some sort of vague political health safety reason or something. Like, so they're all lamenting that stuff. And then he wants to go deeper, and he gets it from these old heads who seem kind of stuffy and boring. Like they're just kind of sawing on and on about like minutia of their little tiny block of a town. And then they don't even believe the story they're telling to be true. But I forget, it relates to another, that story confirms another story that they had heard prior of the same thing. Like a guy suddenly at a party, like looking out off the balcony, and suddenly everything is like fantastical, and there's
Right.
weird colorful plants and like gossamer trees with like glistening dew on them, and like strange beings walking around, and just for like a second he sees that, and then it goes away.
Well, so so yeah, I guess I was like, gentrification is the wrong term. It's sort of like the it's like an early articulation of the like there goes the neighborhood mentality, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it used to be fairies, and now it's
yeah, and it's
us.
what's the name of the place, like South Newington or whatever?
Stoke Newington,
Stoke Newington, yeah, thank you.
which I think that's the N is just Newington, I think.
I think so, because he uses the abbreviation SN a lot
Right.
throughout
Yeah.
the text for Stoke Newington. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I think I do think like this is a really sort of important crystallization of Machen's interest in living in a city and feeling attached to a specific neighborhood, right? And just sort of psychologically, like, I know we can talk about whether or not Machen believed, like, personally all the weird shit that he did believe, probably, but I think this story seems to me to be really relevant to read today because of its metaphorical significance in terms of like people who have lived in a neighborhood for a long time, and see it in their arguably sort of corrupted mentality as like being this Edenic place before whoever moved in and turned it into this degenerate whatever it is now,
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I think that is true. I think those more grounded, somewhat banal facts of, Machen, again, we've mentioned this countless times, but he was very socially conservative. He was like Anglican, like Orthodox English church, like not pleased probably with a sort of modernizing England.
He was probably racist. You can just say it.
Oh, I mean, for sure. But you could probably say that about like fucking anyone at
No,
that
I
point
know.
in England. But yeah, he was certainly. And so I think like those things mixed with the headier, esoteric, theosophical, occult shit that he was into, like part of it is obviously it's just it's like a complicated confirmation of what he already believes on a banal level, right?
Right.
Where it's like he's actively seeing his city change in like physically, and then with like the sort of mores and values probably that are going on, and then but he's able to plug that into this bizarre psychogeographical perspective, spanning thousands of years, about how there's kind of how like history doesn't die on some
Right.
level, or it's just like archaeological layers
Yes.
that obscure something that never leaves, um and that these people seem to almost live in like a parallel universe where they're able to pierce the veil, like we've been saying a bunch of times, and kind of like exist simultaneously for a moment and freak themselves out and like snap back to stable reality one or whatever.
Well, and I think that that's an important point. Like the story is about it's about place, right? It's about the way that
Yeah.
history layers itself onto a place over time. Um, and the ways that we sort of interact with that process, right? Whether that be
And that and
rejection or nostalgia or whatever.
and that feels like a still useful, almost contemporary perspective now to bring to it, right? Like
100%.
Machen, we would be in deep disagreement about Machen's perspective on what it means, or like why he thought the way he did, but
To be clear, not disagreement with each other, with Machen.
with Machen, yeah, sorry. But I think what makes the story still so fun to read too, um, is that it was all these occult weirdos who seemed to believe a lot of that stuff initially, and now it's, I don't know, it bears itself out more relevantly in like philosophy and phenomenology and all this kind of stuff, right?
So
Like,
just like urban studies, you know what I mean? Like the way the city works, like it's sort of like I watched because my wife, she knows I like horror movies a lot, and she's feeling very in the spooky season this year.
right, in
And
August,
so
yeah.
she's well, she wants to get an early start, and so she wants
There's
to.
spooky season is year round if you really are into it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why we're talking about Machen right now.
Spooky season is in the heart, baby.
It's in the heart. You can, yeah.
So anyway, she wants to like get a sort of a crash course education in spooky movies. And so we watched Poltergeist the other day. And
yes, sir.
That movie, it seems to me that is sort of like this story in a weird way, in the sense that like, so in that, if you don't know the plot of Poltergeist, a house is sort of haunted by this ghost, and it turns out it's a modern development that was essentially built on a plowed over cemetery, and the bodies were never even moved because it would be, because of the capitalist imperative, it'd be more expensive, and so they just moved the headstones and so on and so forth.
Well, famously an Indian burial ground.
Well, yeah.
Isn't that how they describe it?
See, I think it was, but I'm not 100% sure. The phrase Indian burial ground is brought up in the movie.
I'm not mixing that up with Amityville Horror, am I?
I don't think so.
Okay.
My interpretation of my most recent watching is that it's ambiguous.
Okay.
But anyway, the idea is brought up. But anyway, it's about the way that technology and development and quote unquote progress is layered upon history and violence, and the way that a place used to be, right, and how that gets plowed under.
Yeah.
And to me, that's also what this story is about. And so like just I'll just read the ending briefly. I know we've
Yeah,
just been reading the endings, but I feel like Machen is a very
we've said this before. He's good at it.
he likes to tie it up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um so this is the conversation between I forget who, it's between the three, you know, Arnold and whatever their names are. What's it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I believe there's a perichoresis, an interpenetration. It is possible indeed that we three are now sitting among desolate rocks by bitter streams. And then someone else says, and with what companions? And that's the end of the story. And I think that's just sort of, you know, Machen kind of signaling that like there are these layers to history. There are these layers to place, to where you are. And you can interact with that reality in a lot of different ways, nostalgia, scientifically, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. But still, like all of those ways are inadequate, essentially.
They don't capture the full truth.
Right. Which I feel like, he's never come out and said it, right? But it's just like, which I think he is attempting to do artistically. Like it's an oblique strategy,
Yeah.
right? It's the occult strategy. It's like you can't just pull back the curtain because the people that do are nuts afterwards. Like
Right.
but it's still important to know. So like
Because
you,
for him, the full truth is always like cosmic, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
at least, spanning the entire existence of the earth,
Yes.
if not cosmic. I think Lovecraft is the one who takes it cosmic.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's right. I think that's the next sort of logical step. All right. Next story.
Yes, sir.
All right. The Tree of Life. I'll just say off the bat, I think this is an outlier for me out of this whole book because this story, there's a couple moments, but like I would say this is the least supernatural of all of the stories. Um,
Oh, can I read something from the previous
oh yeah, of course.
story? Sorry. It is queer, but it's true, Arnold broke in, that there's a general tendency to seize on the accidental and ignore the essential. You may be vague enough, sorry. You may be vague enough about the treble works, the vast designs of the labored rampart lines, but at least you knew that the Duke of Wellington had a very big nose. I remember it, I remember it on the tins of knife polish. So just I don't know why I like thought that was like significant, but just like, the again, easy distraction through commodities and superficiality. Like you retain the least important usually in pieces of information about your environment and whatever.
Yeah, it's like the Duke of Wellington's big nose is like the equivalent of you know, Pete Davidson's next relationship or whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly. The
Yeah.
Kardashians are lying to you.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so the Tree of Life. So like I was saying, like I feel like this is there's not a lot of like supernaturalism in this story as I remember. There's a few creepy moments like with the naked kids coming down the stairs. Um
Yeah.
which I realize is sounds like a, but it's not like the overall thrust of this story is basically about like an uncle who realizes that he has a nephew who's disabled and like creates a world for him to make him feel like he's like the lord of the house that he isn't actually.
Right. Yeah.
And the nephew kind of has these grand designs about planting a tree that can sprout every different type of fruit and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. He wants, I mean, the Tree of Life is also, I guess, some sort of like grandiose term for some sort of evergreen that he wants to plant.
Right.
He thinks he's revolutionizing like English farming. And there's like this man, I forget his name, who comes to like carry out his orders in quotes and entertain this idea.
Right.
But he's essentially in an insane asylum of his own.
Yeah, like an individualized insane asylum created for him by his uncle.
Rich guy insane asylum,
Right.
aka house arrest mansion.
So it's so the guy is Tilo Henry, right? Or Tilo Morgan.
Tila Morgan, which is a cool name.
Um and I forget his uncle's name off the top of my head, but and then he works with the essentially the estate manager, this guy named Captain Vaughn,
Right. From
who
the Lantrasant estates.
right, and Vaughn is just acting, right? He's just pretending to be paying close attention to Tilo's requests and
Yeah.
suggestions for the estate, when really Vaughn is answering to Tilo's uncle, I believe, is their relationship. This was a weird one. I didn't really know what to make of this.
Yeah, to be honest, me neither. Well, like, okay, so may I appeal to the endnotes, the lovely endnotes
Of
here.
course.
It says in the context of this story,
Shout out once again, Aaron Worth.
dude, great work, man. All right. In the context of the story and Machen's known interests, some of the more salient connections are these. In the Garden of Eden, there is a tree of life, as well as the better known tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Another biblical connection is the passage from the book of Revelation quoted at the end of the story. In esoteric Judaism, the phrase refers to a mystical symbol made up of the 10 Sephiroth, or emanations, in Kabbalah, subsequently adopted within the Hermetic tradition, particularly in Machen's time by the Order of the Golden Dawn, which he was a part of. Perhaps Machen had read one of the recent Hermetic works addressing the topic, such as Israel Regardie's The Tree of Life, or Mystical Kabbalah by Welsh occultist Dion Fortune. Yeah. And just was interested in this kind of, I don't know, like biblical metaphor for a person in ignorance to their actual situation being manipulated by people who are merely humoring.
Like higher forces.
Right. And like a highly competent person, but someone who's just got like whatever that like you know, exhaustion disease is, whatever it's called.
Yeah. I don't know if
I don't know how much that clarifies. I mean, it didn't for me either. I thought it was a good story. Like I just thought
it felt like the most grounded to me, right? Like it to me, I just read it as like, and the second half of it is we don't even get it firsthand. It's just these other two guys talking at a bar about this nice thing that the uncle did for Tilo. And he's like, oh yeah, like this guy, he was in a mental institution and then he wound up on the streets because both his parents died, and then his uncle who took over the estate brought him in and sort of like crafted this world to make him think that it was his own.
But that's a great, that does tie into kind of the theme. It might be just more of like it's not using the supernatural anymore. It's using that as just a metaphor for like most even intelligent people's state.
Right.
It's just being in a fabricated world crafted by
higher powers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
true.
so there's this person that's just like living in a very like complex fantasy where he's doing all he's reading so much, and he's just reading like all of this like agricultural literature and the Farmer's Almanac, and he's like he thinks he's revitalizing and revolutionizing like English agriculture, and it's just this sham that's been done as a favor, so that I don't know if there was like a even an economic reason why.
I don't think so. I think it was just in
a way it's sweet. In a way I'm like, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what the two guys at the bar, I forget, I don't even know if we get their names, but when they're talking about the story, that's kind of like, he was a good man because he did this thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, Machen invented the Matrix, is what we're saying.
He could have.
Yeah.
Well, who are we to deny the lines from this to that? You know,
Right. I wouldn't.
Does Tilo Morgan become kind of like a hedonist though at some point in that story? Or am I thinking
I don't
something
remember
else?
that. I don't remember that specifically.
I could be whack. I don't
Yeah.
know.
If you remember what you're talking about, bring it up again. All right, change. So this story is about a creepy village where the lights are always on, and there's a bunch of kids dancing, and there's a boss called the Godskin Apostle at the top. Um,
You gamers thought we forgot about you.
yeah, we know you're here. We know you're still here, gamers. The Windmill Village is creepy. It did remind me of the Windmill Village with all the creepy dancers.
Oh yeah, so I am right though.
Okay, still talking about Tilo.
Yeah, I think Tilo at some point. I don't know. Yeah, he had some sort of period where he was being a bad boy, and he was keeping.
But that was before he was in the wheelchair, right?
It must be right because he couldn't have moved around a lot.
Right. It
But
was
he
like
was
in
also like
his
sickly as a child, so I don't understand this like period. Yeah,
yeah,
it confused me because it was
yeah.
just like I think he just got wheeled around by like fucking reprobates and like uh there was some weird thing where they were like, you know, he's just stay up at all hours and get drunk and his you know, his ribald friends would be, you know, destroying a pub and they would be kind of like leering at girls and stuff, but then there was something about like the only thing and he would hold these like elaborate garden parties a la Gatsby at the
Right.
Lantrasant Abbey and kind of stuff, and like there'd be all these weird pagan shit going on with like reliefs of like nymphs and satyrs and people fucking openly, and but he never really he would just kind of he was like Gatsby, he would just kind of like watch and like
Like a
resignedly.
weird creep.
Yeah. So I don't know if at some point it's supposed to indicate that he may have like cottoned on. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, we can move on.
no. It's a very weird story. Maybe the weirdest one we've read, I think, in this collection. Um, yeah,
And
let's
it does kind of cleave to like if this was in 1930s, this would cleave to like a more flappery, decadent 20. I don't know if like
true.
I don't know enough about the history to like if the English had their equivalent of this kind of golden
Flappers,
age,
yeah.
but probably not. But
I mean, I'm sure they were aware of it, right? Like I'm sure there was cultural transmission.
yeah.
All right, let's talk about change, which, as I already said, takes place in a creepy village with all the lights on.
Yes.
And there's a creepy piece of paper that just has a bunch of vowels on it.
Yeah.
It's just I yo.
Right.
It's just a bunch of A's.
Don't
and
say it aloud.
I's.
Don't say it aloud, Gabe. What are you doing?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna get haunted tonight.
Jeez Louise. It goes
Are you gonna do the whole thing?
no. No, because I'm afraid I don't want to.
It looks like this, YouTube viewers. There you go.
Okay, I guess that's clear enough. Yeah.
Whatever,
just pause,
man. Whatever.
Pause if you want to
just
know
pause it
and say it.
So anyway, so it's about so who are the two guys, right? Reynolds and Rimmer.
Lol.
Which I'm like give me my Dyson and Phillips, please. I don't want this Reynolds and Rimmer bullshit. Who is this?
They have the same letter name.
I don't want fucking Costco like discount fucking Dyson and Phillips.
This is your mom saying we have Dyson and Phillips at home.
Exactly, dude.
Exactly. It's these fucking people.
And it's Reynolds and Rimmer. No, thank
Reynolds and Rimmer.
No. So there's this. So they're talking about. And okay, just on a meta level, like I feel like this is a good example of like, or a good instance to ask the question of like, why did he get rid of Dyson and Phillips? Like, we knew Dyson and Phillips's background. We don't know much about Reynolds and Rimmer in this story, right? Like,
it's just, I mean, they're just mouthpieces. They're just inquisitive people in various places now that like are in the right place at the right time
yeah,
and witness something. It's just, I feel like he gave up again. This is colon enter the Machenverse, but we have lost the Machenverse. Like it's unfortunately he's not creating a fully expanded universe anymore. And also, I guess the Tree of Life was an interesting change of pace, but in this one we're back to the fair folk.
yep,
Which I also think we're in N as like the original beings that sort of
yes,
like live within that Edenic simultaneous parallel universe.
yeah, I think so. Well, and so here there's like it's like a kid goes missing in a town and he's found, but he looks like a weird goblin when they find him, right? Like that's basically what happens. And so I forget which is the skeptical and which is the credulous between Reynolds and Rimmer. I don't remember. Um, but the skeptical one calls the credulous one out to the town basically and is like, I don't know what's going on.
I think Reynolds is the guy who's like interested in Rimmer.
Rimmer is the skeptical one.
No, Rimmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
And it's just about this kid who gets sort of lost and they have to try to go find him in a cave and they hear him yelling. And then when they finally find him, he's like under a tree, clearly sort of touched or cursed by the fairy folk, as Matt was saying. And he's become sort of like an old goblin, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some indication that, it opens on a it's like it's like a resort kind of rocky beach town in Wales, and it opens on these kids playing and everyone's kind of like chilling, and there's some, it's for wealthy people, and there's like this family and they have a caregiver, sort of young girl, whose name I was sorry, she's right at the beginning.
Oh,
Fuck.
yeah, I don't remember.
Alice
Alice
Hayes.
Hayes. Yeah.
Yeah, who works for a one Mrs. Brown. Uh, and she's said to have this almost I would suggest like supernatural way with children. Like she's like the caregiver par excellence. Like she's just like
she's basically Strega Nona.
she, she's a Stregonona Pied Piper hybrid, where she like it seems to be suggested that like she leads them eventually to this weird cave where this little boy ends up getting it probably switched with another
Like a
with
yeah
a
elf
yeah
baby.
with a fairy child,
Yeah.
And it has something to do with her own potential connections to that race of people that she's like aware of for some reason, because she's described as like unearthly beautiful and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know, it's just like another one of these things where like the fair folk,
They take kids, they replace kids, they kidnap kids, like that's kind of just their MO.
yeah, Machen's all over the place with the sort of lore of these beings, because I don't know, sometimes they do a thing where they create a roiling mass of flesh that people witness as like a virginal figure is like subsumed into them and I guess gets teleported to their world or something. Like they breed with humans. Sometimes they're like the pan god, but sometimes they're not. Like he's not very coherent on that point.
Yeah, there's the world building, I would say, is lacking. It's not.
It's lacking. I think he gets excited about a new. I mean, again, the time frame between all of these stories is somewhat large. Like he just
Yeah.
probably gets excited about a new idea.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah, another weird one. I feel like the stories at the end here have kind of lost the thread in terms of like I felt like the earlier stories were so consistent and so um I mean, there's a reason we were talking about the MCU, the Machen cinematic universe, because
Yeah.
it really was connected in that way. And I feel like the ones that we've read for this episode felt so scattershot. Um
Yeah,
and
he's just using, it feels like he's just kind of using the same tropes of like small and assuming towns, people, you know, like learned Englishmen from London in these farther reaches of the
the
UK.
countryside, yeah.
Yeah, it was mostly in the countryside and rural areas where there's like, less of a civilizational sheen, witnessing remnants of pagan shit and sometimes seeing, yeah, fairies. Basically, and that's kind of it, like,
Right.
yeah, Mithraism is referenced here, just to loosely, like, just be like, to just probably just suggest a pre-Christian religion. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and
It
I
feels
also,
like
I mean,
he's
I think, one passage that I flagged that I think does touch on a theme that is consistent throughout Machen is this idea of like, science, like modern science versus old timey truths, right? And so there's this confrontation um at one point where they're talking about the village and the people, and he's like, oh, you believe in fairies, don't you? And he goes, I must say it was a success. Brown looked frightened, not of the fairies, most certainly not, rather at the reversion of his established order of things.
right.
He occupied his business in the city. He lived in an extremely comfortable house at Adenscombe. He was a keen, though sane, adherent of the Liberal Party. And in the world between these points, there was no room at all for either fairies or for people who believed in fairies. The latter were almost as fabulous to him as the former, and still more objectionable.
Right.
So it's just that sort of scientistic modernist mindset of like sort of ignoring the old knowledges, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You want to do the last story?
Let's do it.
Ritual.
Ritual.
It's basically Children of the Corn.
Yep.
Um,
They do a weird ritual. It's suggested to be maybe Masonic.
but also
Uh,
but also somehow has origins in Africa.
right. But all of that is uh fake, right? Like it's all based off of like the hearsay of a religion or of a religious ritual in Africa that then Machen used as a fictional ritual that he used in like a prior thing that he wrote.
Right.
It does feel like he's just kind of like, I don't I this whole collection's really good and I do like it a lot. But I agree with you, like by the end you could feel almost his
The wheels are spinning.
he's he's found as many angles, it seems. I don't know. I know he has more work out there and I'd be interested to read it, but like within this collection, like the way it's ordered, it's like the he just kind of repeats himself in different ways, and it feels a little bit just sort of half-hearted by the end.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I mean, this last story, it's basically about like a roving child gang in a neighborhood that
Yeah.
that has this quote unquote game that they play, where someone always winds up crying out in pain and appearing to fall over dead And the guy that witnesses it, I forget his name, you know, he somehow gets involved with an American researcher who wants him to take him around the city.
Yeah, there's like an American who's like an Anglophile kind of and
Right.
excited about the esoterica of London, and he's all excited when the you know the other guy's like, oh, this is the street that Dickens described in his short story, and the dude's taking a walking tour
Right.
of like cool shit from media that he knows.
But then he's like, all right, well, take me to a weird place, right? Like, take me to where just off the beaten path.
No, he's the opposite. He said, "Show me something normal," didn't he?
Well, yeah, but like normal, I took that to mean like normal in terms of like your everyday life, right? Like,
Right.
because if you go to a city as a tourist, like show me the normal thing. Okay, I'm going to take you to the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to take you to the London Eye or whatever. But
Sure.
I took it to mean like for this American guy, normal in the sense of like normal for you. Like, what do you do on a daily basis, right?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. 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 So, like, yeah, all these things are mentioned, like fucking Madame Tussauds waxworks and, you know, the London Zoo. And then eventually they're just doing the quote unquote normal thing, which is like walking through, I guess, a stranger neighborhood, another trope, right? Like going off the beaten path on your ramble. And then these kids come out and I don't know, they're doing some sort of weird thing. And then one of them gets like touched.
He
He
hugs
gets
him. He hugs him 3 times, right?
right. And then that person the kid hugged collapses. Um,
And then the American guy is like, "Oh, I saw this once in Africa, except the guy that got hugged died, but here the kid gets up." And it is creepy because it's like, does that mean the kid is a zombie? And that's kind of how the story ends, right?
yeah. So it's the Asiki doing their Najoru ritual.
That's what he says. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I feel like this was an appropriate way to end the collection because it kind of like completes Machen's race arc where it's like he's like being so obscure through all these stories. Eldritch, and then by the end he's just like, yeah, it's all from Africa. That's where the bad stuff comes from.
yeah, it's still strange because there is the like Masonic connection that they also make.
True.
But yeah, it's just sort of like
It's the full culmination of the like racial arc, you know.
yeah, he's interested in races in that hyper colonial way where it's like uh in what they have to offer in terms of esoteric knowledge about prior civilizations to the aid of the Theosophical project of like I don't know a full grip on the or religion,
Right.
the
Right.
kind of that will like bring them power or something. But yeah, it's just basically a story about people who see something strange that they don't know how to explain. Because again, these are all endnotes that we're using to like kind of like beef up the story. The story itself is just like they see this kid get kind of they see these kids playing and they think it's just kind of cute, and then there's a headline.
Yeah, it's just like urban children of the corn, and then it turns out the kid actually died.
Yeah, and the kid died. Um, after he references the Nujoro ritual, which is a fictional ritual that he attributes to a real tribe, I suppose, from some sort of historical book he read at some point.
Well, and so it's one of those things where it's like, is this a commentary on, you know, because the American guy says like, oh, I've only ever seen this in Africa,
Yeah,
and then they're like you wonder, is this a sort of commentary on like Machen's worry of like a cultural infiltration, right? Like,
right.
you know, oh, are the Africans invading our culture and polluting our children with their you know, defiled rituals?
Yeah, and also competing, potentially like competing, like cults or
Right.
brotherhoods or whatever, as well, like with a different agenda than perhaps the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Um,
Radagon.
Radagon. They don't want to see the beautiful hierarchy, the golden order, be dismantled and corrupted and turned into chaos.
Machen wanted to be the gold mask.
He did. I think he
Yeah.
really did, though. I
Yeah.
don't even think that's a really like
I
that
know.
bad
I'm telling you, dude. Dark. It's fucking all the.
Yeah.
It's real.
I agree. Yeah, I think like we've mentioned before, like this chaos and this sort of primordial. It's almost a little disappointing too, because you get to the ritual, it ends the collection. I think that's significant. It seems chronologically based for the most part. So this is kind of like what you're left with in this collection. This is the final episode about this book. This book has been read.
Yep. We did it. We literally read a book.
We literally did it. And yeah, I will admit that it ends with a bit of a whimper of just like less robustly rehashing things that like you could feel a more vital inquiry into and kind of interest in the earlier works, you know. And I don't know what the time frame is, 20 years, 30 years,
something like that. Yeah,
maybe like 30 years. Yeah, I don't know, but at this point you're just like, we get it, the world's weird, there's forces of chaos out there that we don't fully understand, and it's disturbing. And you know, I hope Arthur, I hope you can harness the powers for good so that the golden order can be imposed on everybody.
Yep.
Because otherwise it's all kinds of stuff with like black people and fairy folk.
Yeah,
you know, kind of,
yeah.
and the barbarian hordes kind of unleashing primordial pagan shit onto British culture.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I was really enthralled, and this is kind of my final thoughts on it, I guess. Like, I was really enthralled by the early stories in this book. I loved the Phillips and Dyson multiverse, uh, or extended cinematic universe, and then these last handful of stories, you know, it's just like, you know, he fell off, dude. L plus ratio.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, and it makes sense too if it like is continued arguably in the tradition of Lovecraft, who you
Right.
know was an incredibly racist person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, he did recant his earlier beliefs, which I think is something people should know at the very least. Like
True.
he described his previous attitudes as juvenile and disgusting.
Yep.
But when he was writing the stories everyone loves, it was about
It was
all the cosmic horrors and, you know, tainting infiltrations of alien things was, you know, was race.
Yep.
So it makes sense that that would be Machen's general bent as well.
Yeah.
But it's weird. I wish I will do more research into it, but like, yeah, like it coincides with his deeper involvement with theosophy, which is something that obviously also Hitler was into.
Yep.
Yeah, it all kind of
checks out.
It all checks, it all connects, and it's still something that exists today that my final word is just keep sharp eye out for.
That's right.
All the new age fucking people with their wheels of life and their and their yoga and their wellness, like,
okay, yoga is not that bad. Don't lump yoga in with
I'm just
crypto racist. Don't get me wrong. I have plenty of critiques of the westernization of Buddhism and yoga. I literally wrote my master's thesis on
there's a lot of yoga moms that would be saying there goes the neighborhood, if you know what I'm saying.
No doubt.
That's all I'm saying.
No fucking doubt. No fucking doubt.
Yeah.
And fuck those people. They've never read a Buddhist text in their life. I promise you.
No, sir.
So yeah. All right, fine. I recant my hesitation about your original statement. Keep an eye out. Fuck those people.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Didn't want to end the series on a sort of mid-level enthusiasm, but here we are.
It is what it is, you know. Like,
Mhm.
here we stand, we could do no other. You know what I mean?
That's right. So I hope you guys enjoyed our coverage of the stories, and if you want to, we covered this. I kind of put Gabe on the spot tonight a little bit.
What are
to
you
talk
saying? I did a bad job?
No, I think I also did a somewhat underwhelming job, just because like I had read these like a while ago, and so I just felt a little rusty. I wish I had the names and stuff like come into my mind faster.
I mean, they weren't his best work. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want?
No.
You know, what do you want? It is what it is. Like, not everything can be a fucking XQC crypto betting hype stream. You know,
Excuse
we didn't love it. You know, what do you want me to say?
Train wrecks, gambling.
Yeah. What do you want me to say? We didn't like these stories that much.
Sure, but I guess my invitation is, if you know some interesting stuff about this stuff, obviously, please comment. Please get involved. Please tell us information we might not know. We are super welcoming to that kind of thing.
Literally, like 100%.
So yeah, that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah. And if you came here from Dark Souls and you're still here, that's epic. You're a legend.
That's nice. You're a unique fusion of things, and we appreciate you.
We do. We see you and we hear you.
And we're in love with you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Patreon.com/Spinecrackers. Instagram, Spinecrackers. Twitter, Spinecrackers. Facebook, still Spinecrackers.
Get on it.
Get on it. We love you. Bye. As Matt said, and we're in love with you. I'm sorry. I just said the same thing Matt said.
All right. Best of luck. Bye.